What's going on, guys? We're coming to you. This is not live, this is a recorded video, but I figured I was gonna come up here and set something up so I could show people how to use Tabletop Simulator to play the Flesh and Blood trading card game. So these are going to be some instructions that will show you how to use the Flesh and Blood OSC mod. I'm going to link to that mod in the video description, but as a prerequisite to doing the stuff in the video, you're going to need to add it on your Steam workshop. You're also going to need to have purchased Tabletop Simulator. So with those caveats in place, let's get on to the game. So I'm going to show you these things in single player, but the process is basically the same for multiplayer. The interface is more or less the same here. Let's go to the mod. So first I'm going to hit create. I'm going to select single player here. And it's going to show me a list with, up here we have classic games, solitaire, dice, go, whatever. These are locked. I haven't purchased these, but there's paid DLCs for some games. This area down here is saved games, and then this is going to be the workshop with the specific games that you may have installed. As you can see, I have some Star Wars Legion stuff on here, but we're going to be loading Flesh and Blood OSC. So find the Flesh and Blood OSC icon and click on it there. All right, it'll say, are you sure? Hit load. And let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is the mod. So now we are in the Flesh and Blood OSC mod. And so the first thing that you see here is the play space. So we have kind of a mat here and a mat there. And these slots here are for the standard card layout for Flesh and Blood. So I'll just demonstrate with an IRA deck. So some basic controls for Tabletop Simulator for those who aren't familiar with it. If you have a stack of cards in a deck like this, you can pick up the whole stack by clicking and holding, and it will kind of pop up, and then you can drag the whole thing around. If you shake it like this, it'll shuffle it. I'm just clicking and holding and shaking my mouse a bit. You can also highlight it and tap the R key to shuffle. R is in Romeo. That will just shuffle it automatically. If you want to take a single card off the top of the deck, let's say this is my deck and I want to draw one card. There's two ways to do it that are easy. One way is to click and drag off quickly before it picks up the whole deck, and you'll just skim one card off the top. The other way is to select it and tap a number key. So for instance, I want to tap the number 1 to draw one card. And for instance, if I wanted to, I'm going to put this one back. If I wanted to draw 4 cards, I could tap the number 4 and it would draw 4. One thing you have to be careful about with this function is that if it is lagging or there are some problems with it, you can potentially draw too many cards if you're using the number tap. So like if I want to draw 2 cards, but I hit 2 twice, it's going to think that I want to draw 22 cards, and that's not really what I want to do. So that's going to cause me some problems here. And yeah, so you can flip cards by tapping F. So cards in your hand are visible to you, but not to your opponent. So if there were an opponent in this game, he couldn't see all these cards. If I want to put something onto the table face down, I can tap F over it first, and it will flip it. It's still not visible to my opponent. But now when I drag it onto the table, it will drag out of the hand area face down, whereas if I drag this one out, it will be face up. So a good tip is if you're going to put any cards in your arsenal, tap F first and then drag them into the arsenal face down. That way your opponent's not going to see what you may have put in there. Whereas if you do it like this, where you're dragging it out and then hitting F, maybe they're going to see that and realize what card you have, and it'll be to your disadvantage. Okay, so I'm going to put these back. You can click and drag to select a bunch of cards. In that case, I'm just dropping them all back onto that deck. So those are kind of the basic manipulations. You can pick it up and shake it to shuffle. You can tap R to shuffle. If you click and hold and wait for it to pick up, you'll move the whole deck around. If you click and hold but move off quickly, you'll just take one card off the top. And you can put these into your hand by just dragging them into this area. When you see this box show up, it means they're in the hand area, and it'll show up there. And then you can flip it to see what it is. Or you can just highlight the stack and tap the number 1 to draw one card. Okay, simple. So let's, I'm going to draw myself a hand here, and I'll show you another function that's nice about this, mod. So I have, well, this one's Ira, so she should be over there. It's the downside of shuffling before you actually do anything. Okay, so let's say I'm going to. Okay, let's say I'm going to pitch, or no, I'm going to play a scar for a scar. We'll say that it has go again. And then I'll pitch this head jab to play flying kick. That's not really that good a turn, but let's say that's what I did. So then at the end of the turn, I want to arsenal and end turn. So how do I do that? So first, I want to flip this card and drag it into arsenal so my opponent will not see what it is. And then when it comes time to put my pitch card on the bottom of the deck, with it in the pitch zone here, all I have to do is hit this end turn button on the playmat. So you see it says end turn here. It's kind of hard to see. Sorry. My camera manipulations are a little bad. Let's zoom in there. There's a little cracked bauble there that says end turn. And so with that highlighted, I'm going to click it, and it will automatically put my pitch card onto the bottom of the deck. Okay. Other interesting things about Tabletop Simulator, if you tap P, it will change camera modes. So the normal one's third person. There's a first person camera. There's also an overhead view. The overhead view can be sometimes the most legible. You can just use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. But I kind of like the 3D effect, so I often play in the third person. Other things that this mod has to offer, over here on the side, you're going to see a bunch of little doodads. So all of these are piles where if you click one and drag it off, you're going to be able to get individual items from the pile. So like here's a black die, here is a white die, white token, black token or counter, and then we have unlimited copies of all of the token cards in the game right now. So that's Copper, Quicken, Seismic Surge, Rune Chant, and Zen State. These dice and these counters can be used to keep track of, you might use them to keep track of your energy. So, let's say that I want to find something that pitches. Yeah, so I'm going to put down this card. So if I pitch this card that pitches for 2, one thing that I can do is, for instance, I can put a die on top of it and have it be 2 to say that I have 2 energy floating. Another thing that I could do is I could drag 2 of these little counters over. I personally prefer to have I like putting the black counters on the text box of the card and the white counters on the art of the card because it increases contrast. Whereas if you put this black counter onto a part of the art that's kind of dark, it's like less legible at a glance. And similarly, the white counter on the white background is less legible at a glance than the black one. You can grow or shrink things by highlighting them and holding down plus or minus. So you might want to make a die larger so that it's more visible to your opponent so you can tell how much energy they have. You can roll a die by highlighting it and tapping R. Same key as for shuffling. R is in Romeo. And you can also do that with multiple dice. So, if I wanted to, I could blow up both of these dice and roll them both at the same time. Oops, sorry, one sec. There we go. Highlight both of them. Tap R a few times, give them a few spins. Yep. Similarly, if you have like a rune chant token, it can be a good idea to just use dice to keep track of how many rune chants you have. So like maybe I have 1, maybe I have 2, maybe I have 3, and so on. The one other thing over here is the life counter. This one's pretty nice. So this is, it has multiple ways you can use it. So you can hit the plus sign to add 1 at a time. You can hit the minus sign to subtract 1 at a time. You can hit C to reset to 0, but you can also actually click on it and type a number. So like I can click on it and type in 40 if I'm going to be playing a 40 life game, for instance. And that's going to allow me to keep track of life totals pretty easily and without having to click on the plus sign 40 times. So all the stuff over here on this side are just kind of useful tools to help you play the game. I'm going to delete that stuff just to have a more clean play field now that I've demonstrated it. Okay, so then on this side of the board, we have the cards. So these 5 in front are the 5 pre-constructed decks from Legend Story Studios. These are the official decks. So this one is Ira. This one is the Reinar Hero deck. This one is the Katsu Hero deck. This one is the Dorinthia Hero deck, and this one is the Bravo Hero deck. So if it's your first time, if you're new to Flesh and Blood, a good way to get started is to just play with these hero decks on Tabletop Simulator. And just try out the starter decks against someone using another starter deck and kind of just get a feel for the different characters. These decks are of course not the strongest and most consistent versions of those characters by any means, but there's still things that I think can be useful to play around with just to get an early impression of the game. When I first started playing Flesh and Blood on Tabletop Simulator, my friend Grendel who I knew from the L5R community actually, was we just played a few games with various starters. These are only the only ones that are there are the official starters from the Welcome to Wraith classes. There are suggested starter decks from the Arcane Rising classes that LSS posted on their website, but because that wasn't ever actually sold as a product, to the best of my knowledge, that isn't something that you can find on there just in the mod. You might have to build those separately. Um, in terms of decks, though, by far, in my opinion, the best way to use this mod, so you can get, so these boxes behind the deck boxes, actually, this one, I actually don't know. I think this might be all the cards. I think this one is Welcome to Wraith cards only. This one's Arcane Rising cards only. This one's Crucible cards only. So, like, let's say that I want to get Arcanite Skullcap. I can find the Arcane Rising stack, search. If you right click on something, you get a search function, and then you can see a big list, and you can actually type in there to find it faster. So, Arcanite Skullcap, and I'm going to drag it out there. So, if I wanted to add that to a deck, I could do that. And I could make a deck by just like finding all the cards I wanted from these piles, pulling them all out, and making that as a deck. If I did do that, it would take a long time though, and fortunately this mod has another feature that will make it so that you do not have to use that, and that is this nice little thing here. This is actually a deck importer. So if you have your deck built on fabdb.net, you can put in the you could put the deck ID into this thing. This is actually a text box. So if you click there, it will let you paste in the URL or just the code at the end of the URL. And you can hit build, and it's going to lag for a moment, but then spawn everything. Yep, there you go. And there you have your deck, and you even have it in nice separated piles where you have your hero card, you have your weapon, which comes in face down so your opponent doesn't see which one it is. You have your equipment, which comes in a separate pile to make it easier to choose that. So, for this deck, I'm going to put on my standard equipment here just for demonstration. And then, you have your main deck, which comes in one pile. And if you specified a sideboard, you have a sideboard as well, which you can then search through and make some changes depending on what your opponent's character is. So it's very easy to get into the mod using this feature here with the deck import. And there's actually one other cool thing about it that I want to showcase, which is that you can also use this to generate simulated booster packs. So you can use this to play draft or to play sealed if you wanted. So like I've played in a sealed tournament that was played online, put on by the UK Flesh and Blood community, and in that tournament it was possible to play sealed. And what we did was you would just click here. We did Arcane Rising, but let's say we're doing Welcome to Wraith. You just click there. It spawns a simulated pack, and I think I may have spawned it twice because I don't think it's supposed to be 34 cards. Let's try that again. Yep, 17 cards. I accidentally spawned 2 on top of each other there. And then you can, search through that and see, here are all the cards. You could also, if you wanted to like have them more laid out, you could, just pull them over and flip them and use that to get a better indication of what's in that pack, and then use that to potentially run a draft or play sealed or, do whatever. Or, maybe you just want to see what the booster pack opening experience is like, and you just want to try that out. Anyway, that's a nice little feature there for if you want to play some limited play instead of constructed. You can use that simulator. And then there is also, the last thing that I'll highlight over here is there's actually a copy of the rule book in the mod. I don't personally use this, but you can you can go to different pages of the rule book and you can read it right on here in Tabletop Simulator. Oh, this is another feature. This is something that I often do on stream to highlight cards. If you mouse over something and hold down Alt, it will show you a kind of zoomed in view of it like that. So you can use that to read the rule book. You can also just use that to read cards that you see. So we're going to go back over here. There's another nice little feature that goes along with that, which is the peek feature. And so if I have a card that's face down, let's say that this card is in my arsenal and I don't remember what it is and I want to see what card I have there, I can highlight it with the mouse, and hold down Alt, and it won't do anything. It's just going to be showing me the back of the card because that's what's visible. But if I hold down Shift as well as Alt, then I'm going to see the actual card, and I can use that to take a peek at my own face down cards. Now you might ask, well, what if you use this feature to see what your opponent's face down cards were? And luckily, when I remove this, you can see there's a little eye that shows up on the card with my player color if I have peeked at it, and that will be visible to my opponent as well, showing them that I'm peeking at this card and preventing someone from potentially cheating. Um, so that's a nice little thing to know there about that. So those are all the like basic game and like card manipulation functions of the mod. Um, it's all honestly pretty straightforward. Another thing that I'll say about it is you can, if you see the player names in the top right corner, you can click on someone's name to like change their color. For instance, like if I was at this side but I was just setting up for my opponent and I actually wanted to play against that deck, I could switch myself over to the red side. Similarly, if you want someone to be an observer, you can make them gray. So a gray spectator can't interact with anything. So like now I'm trying to peek at this card and I can't. It's not letting me do it because I'm not a player. And I'm trying to move this stuff and it just gives me this message about how gray spectator cannot interact. And then there's another special color, which is this black, which is a color, actually, this is for the Games Master. And typically, you're only going to want to do this if there's someone that you want to be able to see both players' hands. Because if you have the Game Master role, you can manipulate cards. So, like, I've put these cards into this player's hand. And then if I flip them so they're visible to him, they're also visible to me, even though normally they would only be visible to the player. Additionally, I can mouse over cards, and as you can see in the little highlight there, it's going to tell me what the card is without me having to peek at it. So there it says Warrior's Valor, for instance, is the card that is there. And I don't have to peek at it, and it's just giving me that information. I can see it for both players. So if you have someone streaming or someone that you want to let observe both sides, have the host set them to player color black so that they have better information. I think before I close out the video, I do want to show some of the stuff with the interface, though. There is a I have a lot of the interface disabled because I typically want to hide a bunch of that while I'm streaming, just to make it a clearer picture for the audience. But if you turn on these interface elements, there's some notes over here that kind of explain how to use the mod. There are menus up here, so you can use this menu to, I guess, select music. I definitely don't use this menu. I don't think I've ever used the music player. There is the objects feature, which is actually really nice because it allows you to save a deck. So if you go to objects, saved objects, you can get things that you've saved in the past. So that's a deck that I've saved in the past. And you could save a new deck by highlighting the deck, right click, hit save object, and then type in a name and hit save, and you'll be able to load it from that saved object menu even in someone else's game. So maybe you have a deck that once you've imported it, you're going to save it there so that you don't have to find the URL each time to do that. That's one thing you can do. Components here lets you spawn just some generic game pieces. One thing you can do that's sometimes nice is you can spawn a 4-sided die, and that can be handy because it will allow you to it allows you to roll to see what random card you've intimidated in a 4-card hand if you're playing as brute and intimidating someone. But actually what I like to do for intimidate is you just make a stack of the cards that were in hand. So you take the cards out of hand, be sure to flip them first, and make a stack. Then you can highlight that stack, tap R a bit to shuffle it, and then just drag the top card into the banish zone face down. And that's going to be random and doesn't require you to roll dice or do anything else that's going to take a bunch of time. So that's a nice little trick there. In terms of how to actually join games and so on, if you go to the menu and server browser, you can see there's going to be a bunch of games. Some of them are going to be weird. If I type in Flesh, it will find all Flesh and Blood games, but no one's really hosting them right now. You can also type in someone's username to find their games if you know what the host's username is. You can type in the server name if you know what that is, and you can potentially join with a password as well. So that's the server browser appearance. Then another thing that I'll show is that there is a rewind button up here that allows you to rewind time. So if I do something stupid, like let's say I don't know. I don't actually know how to do anything really stupid in this mod. Okay, let's say that I accidentally delete some of my items. One thing I could do is go through those piles to find them, but I can also just tap this rewind button and the game has like some kind of local autosave that it's just going to automatically snap to. One note is that you may have noticed my player color changed from black to blue, which was my original color. If you rewind time, players reset to their original colors for some reason. I don't know why. So if you do have changed player colors, you'll have to respecify that after rewinding. Um, in terms of other features, if you go to games, you can save and load, and it takes an autosave. So if one of the players crashes or disconnects or the server dies, you can potentially use that autosave to recover. If one of the players has to go, you can hit save. You can, create a new save file, type in whatever you want as the name, and then potentially load it in a later situation. So that is kind of useful there. In options, it's possible to change the server settings after having hosted the server. So this is single player, so it won't really show all the things. You can see some of it's grayed out. But you can like adjust this slider for more max players if you've hosted a multiplayer game and you want to like add a spot for an observer. Similarly, you can change the server name or I believe the password at that time as well. Um, yeah, so those are kind of the basic functions of the Flesh and Blood OSC mod on Tabletop Simulator. I recommend this mod. I think that the deck import is the easiest way to get things going in there. There's a few other things the mod can do that are sort of complicated. I'm not going to show those here. There's a way to like, there's ways to like change the playmat and do stuff like that. But I think stuff like that is kind of complicated and unnecessary. This is just like the basics of how to get going with it. Um, and yeah, so that's basically going to do it for this. This is how to play. This is just the basic how to use Tabletop Simulator to do stuff. I want to show you like a sample turn and how that might go, just to give you an idea of the flow. So let's say, this is my deck. I'm going to shuffle it up. Let's say that I'm going first. So at the start of my turn, I am going to drag one of these dice over here and put it on my tunic to indicate that I've gotten a tunic counter. I'm going to have my hand, and then let's see here. Yeah, so let's say, and I should have a life counter set to 40. Obviously I'm not playing against a real opponent, but this is just an idea of what a turn might look like. So then, yeah, let's say I'm going to play this hit and run. I'll just drag it onto the board. I'll pitch this energy potion for 3. We're going to copy and paste this die and then set it to 3, but I'm going to use it to swing my Dawn Blade for 2 with go again. Let's say my opponent blocks it, so then I'm going to play this Scar for a Scar afterwards, just drag that out there to play it. Maybe my opponent blocks, maybe they don't, but let's say that's going to be the end of my turn, so then I'm going to highlight the one card that I have in my hand, tap F to flip it over, drag it into my arsenal, move the die off there, tap the end turn to put this card on bottom, highlight my deck, and tap 4 to draw a new hand. I'll also just drag this stuff to the discard pile and the Dawn Blade back, and then I'm ready for the next turn. Similarly, if I'm the one defending, my opponent's attacking me, I can just drag a card out and say, block for 3 or whatever. Sometimes people are going to play this game while being on voice chat with their opponent, which makes it easier to coordinate in some ways. Sometimes people are just going to type in the chat. A few things that might be relevant if you're playing by text. People sometimes abbreviate things. NB is no block. GA is go again. So, and then AR and DR are attack reaction and defense reaction. So, I might type out like, if I did that turn that I was doing previously where I was doing hit and run Dawn Blade, I might say 3 GA. And, my opponent might block, and then I say pass AR, which means no attack reactions. And after my opponent passes, I might play this and say 4, and then GA or no GA, depending on whether or not the text of the Scar for a Scar was active. So maybe I say 4 GA, maybe I say 4 no GA, and then my opponent can block and so on accordingly. That's just a little slang that people use to make that go faster. Similarly, if I want to block with equipment, I'm just going to drag that out to show that it's out there. Tabletop Simulator, it's not really automated like you might see with an Octagon plugin or with a if you've played some of the Fantasy Flight games, LCGs, they often have these like websites that have a lot of the things scripted. This isn't really scripted. It's a lot more like playing in person. So you're just going to be manipulating the cards by yourself in kind of a similar way to what you'd be doing in a real game. You're not going to be, it makes it a little easier to shuffle. It makes it a little easier to randomize and stuff like that. But it doesn't have like rules enforcement that's going to play the cards for you or tell you how much damage it is. You have to kind of work that stuff out with your opponent. All right, I think that's going to do it for this video, guys. That's my overview of how to use Tabletop Simulator just in general terms and the specific functions of the Flesh and Blood OSC mod. If you want to learn more about Flesh and Blood, I have several videos here on YouTube, as well as sometimes I do some Twitch streams at twitch.tv/tower number 9. I do kind of gameplay analysis of my own recorded games on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I cover other games as well when I have time, if there's a tournament going or if there's a game that I think might be interesting to cast. So I'll have Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern time, if you're in the United States, are my scheduled streams of just a commentary on my own games, and then I have unscheduled streams commenting on other people's games. I also have a blog set up at towernumber9.com. You can check out that blog, and I have some kind of tournament reports and strategy articles and stuff if you prefer written content to videos. Though if you prefer written content to videos, I, maybe should have announced that in a different way than at the end of a somewhat long video. In any case, though, guys, that's going to do it for this one. And yeah, so there's a link to the mod in the description. There's a link to those my other like content areas or whatever that I just discussed. And yeah, hope to see you guys playing Flesh and Blood online. It's kind of ironic that the game called Flesh and Blood, which is supposed to be played in the Flesh and Blood, has a presence on Tabletop Simulator in this way, but it's one of those things where the devs, the developers are aware of it. The developers actually like it, as far as I know, because even though their game was designed to be played in person and to support the local game stores, the fact of the matter is that the virus situation right now makes that really difficult. And it's also just a good way for people to get their feet wet without having to go and buy a bunch of cards. So yeah, hopefully I'll see some of you guys on there. If you have any questions or comments about Flesh and Blood or about Tabletop Simulator or this video or anything, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I do try to read and reply to comments if people have relevant questions. But aside from that, that's going to do it for this video, and I will catch you guys later. Thanks, guys.